in creating a WPF app that gets a JSON schema and creates a form based on the JSON schema in order to execute a store procedure in SQL Server. So we had this method here, the get JSON schema for store proc, for store procedure. What it's going to take is a connection string and the name of the store procedure. It's going to execute a special SQL query that's going to get the information about the store procedure, the parameters, the parameter name, the type of the parameter, and then it's going to start creating a stream that represents the JSON schema from the data from that query. So that's the right here. We have some code here to manually create the JSON schema that represents the parameters that the store procedure receives. So I'm gonna hit breakpoint here, and we're just gonna try to call this from our WPF application. So to do that, we're going to create this here. We're going to go in here to our main window we had. Just something dummy here. We're using a JSON schema from the file system. But now we're gonna get our JSON schema from our SQL Server. So we're gonna try this. Just again, this is just a test. We're just doing this, some sort of proof of concept. You typically don't put this kind of stuff inside the constructor of the main window. So we're gonna call this sp info new processor, and then we're gonna click here to get a reference to SQL wrapper, which is our project. Our project contains the SQL related things. And SQL Visual Studio is adding the reference. So we're gonna put sp info, and then we're going to get, instead of doing this from the file system, we're gonna get the file roster procedure, and we need a connection string. We're gonna do this again. This for proof of concept purposes. You will typically inject this connection string via configuration, but we're just gonna do it here, and just gonna copy just gonna copy this. Copy the connection string that is here, and in order to do that, I need to open it from Visual Studio Code. Let's see if it lets me. I'm opening on a window that you're not seeing. I'm opening that. Let me see if I can open it here on OBS. And sure enough, this is my VS Code window. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that connection string. So I'm going to go to my publish. This is my beautiful connection string. It's basically pointing to my SQL Express, and it's just doing you typically put this as true or multiple active results, and it's just connecting using Windows authentication. That's why you see integrated security equals true. That way I don't have to specify a password in the connection string. I'm gonna pass this connection string here, and of course you're probably not seeing that. Let me minimize this here. So let me get it out of here. then the name is enroll student. Okay, so procedures usually you want to name them to represent what the business purpose of it is. So in this case, we're gonna enroll a student. So copy that. We're gonna go back here and the name here. And we'll see what happens. Now this is an async function. So we unfortunately, because we're inside a constructor, we're just gonna do it synchronously, getting the result. So let's see what happens. We're gonna run our WPF application. It's taking a little bit. And there were some errors. Let's take a look at that. What happened? Unexpected character. Yeah. Save that. By the way it creates that JSON is doing manually adding uh, using the new system that text that JSON API from that .NET Core is running it manually, creating basically running tokens, starting an object, adding a property name, then the value, and so on and so forth. Let me run this again. As you can see, it's taking a little bit. You can see it's running. It's taking about 25 megabytes of memory right now. And it jumps to 49. As you can see, oh, let's see. We got a blank. Why will have gotten the blank? And that might be something to do with the stream, maybe. There's no length on it. Let me stop. Let me go to the internet and find out what's wrong with my writer. I am using memory string. Let's try again one more time and see. So it is writing. And trying to figure out why Let's hit continue, and my JSON is empty. Why would it be empty? Let me do a watch on this. It's a byte, 0 bytes. That is interesting, and I believe it might have something to do with setting the position. Memory stream. Maybe I probably have to flush it. It is definitely interesting. JSON writer. Why is the writer not liking me? Maybe flush. Let me flush a thing and see what happens. Let's see if that's what we needed. And I forgot to be on breakpoint. Yep, it was just flush. Let's see what the got spin role, student request, type object, properties, and there's no properties, so properties are not being added, and that's interesting because it should. So one thing I can do is execute this inside the SQL server. I'm gonna try to do this, SQL Server Explorer. Just gonna run that query manually. Notice we got our stored procedure here, or not. Maybe we don't have the stored procedure yet. And that's why it's not like that. Oh, no, that's the wrong database. I need to connect to my SQL Express instance. So we get a window that you're not seeing, but it's the dialog for connecting to a SQL instance from Visual Studio. So I'm connecting to SQL database. And the problem might be that I haven't published that change about the stored procedure. So let's fix that. Let's just do one more thing so that the stored procedure scope identity. Your student ID, because returning that as the new identity. Now, scope identity is used to return whatever the identity generator generated within the scope. So let's publish that. Then what I did was to publish the database using the publish system in Visual Studio to publish the database to SQL Server. My database is defined as a SQL project here. We got my table, and I got my stored procedure here. And that's taking quite a while of time. Not sure why. Let me cancel the other ones. It's definitely taking some time. It usually doesn't take that much time to publish, especially when it's such a small database. I guess he had other tasks they had to run. And for some reason, I cannot cancel them. Let me try to disconnect and disconnect. Oh, there was that. Let me do a new query here. Well, that's been published. Nope, that's not what I want to paste. I want to paste our special SQL that should give us our parameters. SP and roles to the end. Well, let's do this SP and roles to the end. And let's take a bit sweet time. Okay, but that query again is polishing it. There was a version of that stored procedure and still trying to polish for some reason. But here we have the parameters. So the parameters are there. It's just they're not being read by our C# code for some reason. So we gotta find out why. Put a breakpoint in here just to make sure that SP name matches what we're expecting. I already have a breakpoint here. So let's try this again. I go to debug. And then we found here that, let's see, the SP name, the stored procedure name is the same. I mean, it's the correct one. So it should be giving us something. Let's continue. And it did not do anything over here. It's not yielding what we need. It's definitely not yielding what we need, and we need to know why it's not doing that. Oh, I know exactly why. Back in here on our connection string, we forgot to put the database that we want to connect to. Right now it's just connected to the master database by default. So I have to correct that. And the parameter is database equals and the database that you want to connect to. I put here, that will be sample.db. I don't think it's case sensitive, so we're gonna run it now. Now that we are connecting to that database instead of the master database, then our query will run in the context of that database and therefore get the parameters for that sort procedure. There you go, prop name, first name. And we forgot to do this, we forgot to fix this. This should be a not equals. Oops. Save this. Hopefully apply code changes. And I don't think that did much. So we'll just stop debugging and run it again. It's probably easier that way. And we're gonna run it. And notice that we are adding as a required field because I just found a convention where if the name starts with optional, then it will be optional. Otherwise, we want all the parameters of the stored procedure to be required in to be listed as required in the JSON schema. Because there is no way to specify from the type in the parameter whether or not it's an optional value. So we're just using a naming convention instead. Return the JSON and just gonna let it run. And it ran, but let me, I believe I need to show you the window. Capture. Okay, and it's not drawing on the screen for some reason. I apologize for that. Let me minimize it and then open it again. It is interesting that it's not drawing on the OBS broadcaster. Let me try something here. Properties. Oh, I had the wrong one. I'm gonna cough. Then as you can see, we have our parameters for the stored procedure. And I believe we have, did we add the types? Maybe. Let's try F. Yeah, must be an integer. And here, it's okay to put letters and it cannot be empty. And that's how we execute a SQL query and generated a JSON schema and display those properties based on the JSON schema returned from that SQL query in our WPF application. Now this one here, let me try changing how it looks, because I don't think they look very well, very good. I believe that's on this. So let me write the 0 here. I pop it a label here. Then we're gonna change this aside, and then I'm gonna change it to, let's see, we don't want the card, we want the item control. Let's see if this works. So it sort of worked. Surprisingly, they align, which is good. That's what we wanted. We probably want this text on the left to align against this. So I believe all we have to do is a vertical align. So what we're going to do is for the text block, and I apologize about that. I used to know how to do this very well. I believe it's the spacing. Column definition. Horizontal. Nope. Maybe it's on here. Horizontal alignment to the right. Let's see what does. It's too close, so let me do margin